Welcome and thank you for sticking around for the second half hour of The Factor Uncensored. This morning on the Breakfast Club, singer and actor Tyrese Gibson got emotional after being asked about his mental health.
I'm doing the best I can with every 24 hours I get. That's it.
Get some tissue for me, brother.
No, I don't need no tissue. Black men cry.
That's right.
You know, tissue. Every 24 hours I get, I'm doing the best I can.
Now, as you heard there, he says black men cry, which leads to our next conversation, tears and black masculinity. We have here with us real estate agent and broker Jay Bradley, parent Lewis Hunter, cybersecurity expert Patrick Jones, and author Velton Hunt. Glad to have you all here on The Factor Uncensored. So, Patrick, you and I had a brief conversation via text, and you're saying you went through a lot of stuff, and sometimes you have to let it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, I went through my trials and tribulations early on, losing my son's mother at 17 years old, and then 21, lost my mother to ovarian cancer. So, 100%, do black men cry? Absolutely, we cry. Now, the way in which we cry, everyone's a little bit different, right? I choose to cry by myself, you know, so I can sit down and kind of manage myself. But as far as not crying, I haven't heard of that. We're all human. So yes, we all shed a tear or two.
And Velton, let's hear from you also, a struggle in your life still going on.
Okay, so basically, a couple things I actually went through in my life was basically growing up in a household where it was extremely strict, and actually leaving the household and actually from being 18, learning about manhood, learning about the ins and outs, not properly learning about the birds and the bees, actually meeting women at a young age, being hooked on women at a young age, having 2 kids out of wedlock by 2 different women, and having 2 daughters, maintaining 2 different households, and also maintaining mine while not being in that specific household. But also just basically just maintaining homelessness, and not maintaining it, but actually being a consistent thing, and being a mortifying thing where it horrified me. Basically not having enough to make ends meet, working 2 jobs. You know, at that time I was working at Best Buy in the Williamsburg, I think I met you at Isaiah, and also, you know, working at Target part-time as a night stalker, but still not actually making ends meet. So I think that was like the hardest thing I experienced where.
And what I think it's important for you to get out, you're still homeless.
That's correct.
And I always see you in the Woodlands, but I'm like, you don't look homeless.
Yes.
But in theory, you are.
That's absolutely correct. I think, too, they say homeless has a look. It really doesn't have a look now these days. I would say it's about dignity. And like meeting this gentleman right here, actually speaking for a little bit, it's about having morals and have self-respect for your family, your guideline, whatever your father, grandfather actually stood you and actually taught you as a young man. That's something that you should take to house. So you shouldn't embarrass your family or your family's last name. And I think, too, you should work through it. No matter how hard it is, it's going to be hard for the black or brown man. Us being black men, it's going to be hard. But we have to build community. The only community I had was myself, was like listen to Les Brown self-development audio.
All right.
There's an old saying that a good navigator cannot be judged who has only sailed smooth seas. You know, part of being a man is to go through trials and tribulations. That's what builds character. Do black men cry? Of course they do. You know, I mean, maybe they don't wince their face like they're mid-sneeze. You know, they don't wrinkle up. You know, but we cry in private. You know, we don't need encouragement to cry. Most black men are not going to cry in public. It's a sign of weakness. It's a sign of vulnerability. And unfortunately, in the society that we live in, we can't afford to have those vulnerabilities tapped into. You know, so do black men cry? Of course, but we just can't. I'm tired of seeing black men cry on film. You know, I think that it seems to be almost a campaign by women, much like the whole pink thing. I'm secure within my manhood, you know, so let it out. I don't think women understand really what they're asking for. And when they get it, they're going to look at them like a punk anyway, you know. So yeah, we cry. We cry in private, you know, tears fall out, and we compartmentalize it and we move on.
All right, Jay.
Lewis, I want to help you publicly cry today.
Come on.
I'm just messing with you. You know,
good luck with that.
No, Yes, we cry. I don't think it's a time or a place that's exclusive for sharing your emotions, regardless of whether it's your tears or whether it's something else. You know, I have a son, and I know we both have boys, and I encourage them to cry, man. Hey, how are you feeling? Check in with yourself. What are your emotions? Let's talk about it. There's a time and a place when it comes to that, but I think by showing him that there's only restricted to certain environments, doesn't allow him to fully develop where he needs to do, and then he ends up, you know, later on, I'd much rather him understand his emotions now and know how to process them. And me, myself, man, I literally lost my father 3.5 years ago, and I lost my mom earlier this year. Yeah. I spent my mornings crying when my mother passed, literally until from 8 a.m. until noon, and then I would have the strength later on to get up. With my father, I didn't cry at all. And so I realized that I needed to process those emotions in the moment and be present for it, so that way I can then process the rest of the things that I have to go through. But there's a time and a place that you need to tap into that and let it out. I don't give a dang if it's in the car or if it's at home.
All right, we'll be right back with this conversation after the break. Welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. We're talking about, should black men cry? All right, Lewis, let's hear from you.
You know, I grew up in a generation where you couldn't cry if you got your ass whooped, you know, and you were, so the metric of being a young man in my generation was toughen it out, you know, walk it off. Crying is a huge sign of weakness amongst men. And even in socially, you know, no matter how much it's pushed, if you see a woman on the street crying, you know, she's probably going to garner the sympathy of some stranger. If you're walking down the street and you see some grown-ass man crying, you're crossing the street. Something is wrong with this man, you know?
Bitch ass doing?
Yeah, like, come on, you know, so, you know, and the whole, the ceremony behind crying. I think women expect men to wrinkle up and do a little retard face and that whole thing, you know, and men aren't doing that. Men aren't doing that.
You have to understand that every time a man cries, it's not because a woman is making him.
No, I get that. But the woman's not going to respect you either. You know, if you cry too often to your woman, that's when Jody comes knocking.
Jody?
Yeah.
I feel like, and we apologize for Lewis's R word.
I'm sorry.
But go ahead, Patrick.
I feel like we have to look at the adverse effect as well of not crying and not necessarily being one with your emotions. And when I say being one with your emotions, I'm not talking about, you know, sobbing and going out and putting your emotions on display. But we have to talk about how it impacts our youth, because some of them are walking around so hard, if you step on their shoes, it's a problem, right? So you have to understand when it's okay to release, and that may be in the bathroom, that may be while you're, you know, taking a shower, but you don't want to walk around so tough.
The question I've got, do you think that crying has to be that release? Why can't it be something?
It could be
more
lifting
manly,
weights. It could
right?
be,
you know,
yeah.
right?
It could be lifting weights. It could be any of that.
Isn't manly though. I think that's what the whole thing that Tyrese was saying, man.
Because if you look at it, it's not socially. Men don't cry. That's always been a mantra, and that's for good reason too.
What's always been doesn't have to always be. Just the traditional, you know, male gender norms of being stoic. I grew up in that. When you look at even our pictures as a family growing up, we didn't even smile.
And those gender norms served you well.
Exactly.
They served me to a point until I got to an adult and I realized I need to attach to my emotions and understand them so that way I can process them other than a form of anger.
How far down that hill do you go?
All the way.
So you go all the way down. So,
all the way.
So that emotionally, because
needed, yeah.
I've been raised to believe men are logical. I'm a logical person.
Absolutely.
I'm logical before I'm emotional.
Right.
When my father passed away, I was 21 years old. He was 56. No, I didn't know how.
Okay.
You know, I wanted to,
but
you know, but physically I couldn't cry. I was crying inside. But the physical manifestation of tears does not equal to mourning.
I get it. Sure. I get it. But you just said you didn't know how, which means that at a certain point in your life, you realize that if you did know how, then you may have wouldn't want to tap into that. All I'm saying is that it's okay to have it to tap into when you need it.
I can't speak Vietnamese and I don't try. You know, it's something that I don't look at.
But you still can't effectively order Vietnamese food because you don't know the language.
Yeah, I know it exists. I know it exists. I know what it is, but I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that there are reasons why men don't shed tears.
Right.
It's particularly amongst
gotta be quick. Gotta be quick.
In addition to that, and I understand where you're coming from, but when you box your emotions up, then that means you box a certain piece of you up as well. So then we're talking about romantic, right? how can you give yourself to a woman 100% if you don't know yourself 100%?
I am not crying in front of a woman.
I'm not either.
Honestly, that's been my downfall because I grew up in the era where my father served in the United States military, served in the Army. So basically, I always taught, like, you don't cry about stuff. So basically, letting things go. So a lot of my love lives failed because I was quick to let it go because I said, well, I really don't care. My mom is solid. My dad runs the house.
All right, thank you guys. We're going to get to your love life next show.